Imagine a land, wild and untamed, 2,000 years ago. Rolling green hills, thick forests, and windswept plains, this was ancient Britain. And in the east, the proud Iceni tribe thrived under their king, Prasutagus. They were fierce warriors, but also shrewd in dealing with the might of Rome, the greatest empire the world had ever known. For years, a fragile peace held between the Iceni and the Romans. Prasutagus ruled as a client king, free in his domain, yet bound in alliance. But in the year 60 AD, everything changed. Prasutagus died, leaving behind his queen, Boudicca, and their daughters. In his will, he left half his kingdom to Rome, half to his family, hoping to protect them. Rome, however, saw no reason to honor the agreement. Greed and arrogance fueled their actions. Roman soldiers descended on Iceni lands, seizing property, enslaving the people, and taking control. When Boudicca resisted, they answered with humiliation and cruelty. She was stripped, beaten with whips, and her daughters were assaulted. It was not only an outrage to her family, it was an insult to her people. But Boudicca did not break. She did not bow. Instead, she rose. Her fury became a rallying cry. She called upon the Iceni and neighboring tribes, the Trinovans, and others long oppressed by Rome. The resentment that had been smoldering for years now blazed into open rebellion. From village to village, the warriors gathered, answering their queen's call. In time, her force swelled to over 100,000 strong, men and women, armed with swords, spears, and the unshakable belief that they could drive the invaders from their land. Their first target was Camulodunum, what we now know as Colchester, a Roman settlement and symbol of imperial dominance. It fell swiftly. Boudicca's army burned it to the ground, showing Rome that the people of Britain would not kneel quietly. From there, the rebels marched south to Londinium, London. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, realizing his forces were too small to defend it, abandoned the city. When Boudicca arrived, the destruction was merciless. The town was razed, its inhabitants slaughtered. Then came Verulamium, modern-day St. Albans, meeting the same fate. The scale of devastation was staggering. Roman accounts, perhaps exaggerated, claimed that 70 to 80,000 Romans and their allies were killed. It was vengeance without mercy. And to the Roman 9th Legion, who came to stop her, the queen delivered a crushing defeat, annihilating much of the force. For a moment, it seemed that the impossible was happening, that Rome, the mighty conqueror, could be driven from Britain. But the empire was not so easily broken. Paulinus regrouped his legions, seasoned warriors trained in discipline and strategy. While Boudicca's army was vast, it lacked the coordination of Rome's machine. The final clash came at the Battle of Watling Street. The Romans chose their ground carefully, a narrow location where the Britons could not fully use their numbers. The disciplined legionaries formed tight formations, shields locked, spears ready. The Britons, fueled by rage and victory, charged. But Roman tactics held. Their lines did not break. When the Roman counterattack came, it was swift and brutal. The Britons were driven back, trapped between the enemy and their own wagons, where families had gathered to watch the battle. It became a slaughter. Tens of thousands of Britons lay dead. Boudicca herself refused the humiliation of capture. Rather than be paraded in chains through Rome, she chose death, taking poison. She died as she had lived in rebellion, unbroken by her enemies. Her uprising was crushed, and Roman rule over Britain tightened in its aftermath. But her name endured. Boudicca became a legend, a warrior queen who dared to defy the greatest empire of her age. To this day, she stands as a symbol of resistance, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a people who refuse to be conquered. 2,000 years ago, long before the cities and motorways of modern Britain, the land was wild. Dense forests whispered in the wind, rivers cut through rolling green hills, and tribes lived close to the earth, warriors, farmers, hunters, and leaders bound by ancient customs. Among them lived the Iceni tribe in the eastern lands, proud, fiercely independent, and guided by their king, Prasutagus. For years, the Iceni had struck a delicate balance with the greatest power on earth, the Roman Empire. Rome's legions had crossed the seas and conquered much of Britain, but Prasutagus had secured peace through an uneasy alliance. His people kept their freedom, while Rome enjoyed their loyalty and tribute. But such arrangements are fragile, and when Prasutagus died in 60 AD, he left behind more than grief. In his will, he tried to safeguard his family's future, leaving half his kingdom to Rome and half to his queen, Boudicca, and their daughters. It should have been a peaceful transition. But Rome did not honor the agreement. Instead, they came with soldiers and greed in their hearts. the Iceni lands were seized. The queen, Boudicca, a tall, fierce woman with flowing red hair, was dragged before them, stripped of dignity, and beaten with whips. Her daughters, still young, were assaulted. This was not just cruelty. It was a statement, Rome's way of saying that the Iceni were nothing, that their pride, their bloodline, and their freedom meant nothing before the power of the empire. But Rome had misjudged their enemy. Boudicca did not weep in defeat. She did not beg for mercy. She rose. Her humiliation became a spark, one that would set all of eastern Britain aflame. Moving through villages and tribal lands, she called for justice, for vengeance. She reminded her people of every insult, every tax, every soldier's boot that had trampled their soil. The Iceni answered her call. So did the Trinovans, a tribe long crushed under Roman rule. From the forests, from the hills, from the plains, they came, warriors with spears and swords, hunters with bows, even farmers wielding axes and sickles. Men and women alike stood beside their queen. Their numbers swelled to an army said to be over 100,000 strong. Their first strike was against Camulodunum, Colchester, once a tribal stronghold, now a Roman colony. It was more than a settlement. It was a symbol of conquest, complete with a temple to the emperor himself. The attack was swift and devastating. The defenders, a small Roman garrison, were overwhelmed. Buildings burned, the temple was destroyed, and the settlement was left a smoldering ruin. But Boudicca's army did not stop. They marched south toward Londinium, London, the young but thriving heart of Roman Britain. Here, the governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, faced a grim choice. His forces were too few to defend the city. Reluctantly, he withdrew, leaving the inhabitants to their fate. When Boudicca arrived, the fate of Londinium was sealed. The rebels swept through the streets, torching buildings and striking down all who stood in their way. Flames and screams filled the air as the city was reduced to ash. Then came Verulamium, St. Albans, meeting the same fate. The destruction was complete. Roman historians, perhaps exaggerating but leaving no doubt of the scale, claim that 70 to 80,000 Romans and their allies were killed in these attacks. The rebellion even shattered a large part of the Roman Ninth Legion, one of the empire's most feared military units. For a moment, Rome's grip on Britain seemed to tremble. But Rome was far from beaten. Paulinus gathered his legions, hardened soldiers, drilled in discipline, armed with shields, short swords, and an unshakable belief in their own superiority. The final confrontation came at a place remembered as Watling Street. The Romans chose the battlefield carefully, a narrow pass, flanked by forests, where Boudicca's massive army could not surround them. The Britons charged in waves, their cries echoing through the air. But the Roman lines held, shields locking together in a wall of iron. At the right moment, they counterattacked with brutal precision. The Britons were forced back, trapped between the advancing legions and their own wagons, where families had gathered to watch. The slaughter was unimaginable. Tens of thousands fell. Boudicca herself faced a choice: capture, humiliation, and chains, or freedom in death. She chose the latter, ending her life with poison rather than submit to Rome. Her rebellion had failed, but her defiance became legend. Even in defeat, Boudicca stood as a symbol, not of loss, but of courage. She had dared to face the greatest empire in history, and for a brief, burning moment, she made it tremble. To this day, her name is remembered, not just as a queen, but as a warrior who refused to bow.